Hi guys, James here, also known as Made by Pete. Welcome to my studio. Today we're going to be looking at the brand new SSL Fusion Violet EQ plugin. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the interface and then we'll jump into a project and see what it can do. The plugin has been meticulously modeled on the SSL Fusion Violet EQ processor. It's a two-band shelving EQ, and like the hardware, it also features a high-pass filter. For the plugin, however, SSL have cleverly added the additional feature called FAT. More on that shortly. The high and low frequency sections both offer 4 fixed bands, and it's been designed as a musical EQ, so it has broad curves with plus and minus 9 dB for each band, which gives you sort of enough scope to process your signal but without going too far. Finally, we have the input and output trims and metering so you can keep your levels in check, and we have a handy punch in, punch out button so we can A/B our original signal with the processed one. Now, I'm lucky enough to have the SSL Fusion hardware here in my studio. I've been using the Violet EQ plugin for the past few weeks and can honestly say that SSL have done a fantastic job of modeling the hardware. Okay, so let's jump into a project and check out the Violet EQ in action. Okay, this is the project that I've been working on recently, so I'm just going to give you a quick listen so you can check out what's going on. Okay, so the first example we're going to look at is using the Violet EQ on an individual track. I've got this Moog sub 37 bass part that I've recorded here, and the first thing you can see here is that I've used a high pass filter just to remove any sort of unwanted low end rumble, those really low sub frequencies that can get in the way. So I've got that up at 50 Hertz here, and then I'm using the low shelf to boost also at 50 Hertz, so the same frequency. Now that might sound a bit counterintuitive, but it's actually quite a famous EQ technique. And it's made possible due to the fact that the high pass filter and the low shelf both have slightly different curves, so they interact really well together. So this boost in the low is giving me the weight that I want, and then that high pass filter is just removing any of that low end sub that's gonna get in the way. So let's have a listen in and out. Okay, so we're working with really low frequencies here, so I would advise you have yourself a good pair of headphones or you're listening on studio monitors to get the full effect of what's going on. Now, at the start of this video, I also mentioned the new addition, the FAT feature. And what the FAT does, it just adds a little bump in the EQ curve at the selected frequency. And that just helps us to add a little bit of extra oomph, especially in that low end area. This could be really useful on a kick as well. So we're gonna engage that as well and have a listen. Nice, really feeling that extra weight there. Okay, the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a little bit on the about 8K here, and that's just going to help us, you know, enhance some of that texture of the Moog and really sort of make it pop towards the top end. So let's have a quick listen in isolation, and then I'll bring all the other elements back in and we can have a listen to the changes that we've made in context. Okay, so the next example we're going to look at is using the Violet EQ on a group. I've got all of my drums and all of my percussion coming in here on this group, which sounds like this. Okay, so we're going to focus on the high shelf here, and I mentioned at the beginning of the video that the EQ is quite a musical EQ and it's got broad curves, and that allows us to push it quite hard without sounding distorted or losing any clarity. So let's just have a listen and see how far we can push this shelf. Okay, so we can hear even at +9 that the most extreme setting, it still sounds very musical, it still sounds very clear. It's a lovely sounding EQ. So I'm going to back it off a little bit, just a bit more of a normal setting, and then we'll have a flick through the 4 bands and bring the EQ in and out so you can hear how it sounds. Okay, so you can hear the further up the frequency spectrum we go, the more air we begin to add to our track, and we get that sense of space, which is really nice. I'm going to bring it back down to 8 kilohertz because I think that's where I fancy it on this project, on this sound source anyway. And I'm going to leave the boost at quite high there at 5.3. Because we've got a little trick we can use with the high frequency compressor. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this to sort of smooth out the sound after we've used the EQ to boost the high end, and I'm going to set the crossover here to the same band that I've got here, so 8 kilohertz, and we'll engage the compressor and we'll bring the threshold up until we start to hear some compression. And the goal here is to keep the clarity and to keep the presence but remove any harshness. Okay, so a nice trick there if you've got the high frequency compressor as well. Okay, let's listen to this part again in isolation with and without the EQ, and then I'll drop it back into the full mix so you can hear it in context. Okay, so for the final example, we're going to look at using the violet EQ on the mix bus. Now, obviously, mix bus processing is done quite subtly in stages, but we can utilize all of the features here on the violet EQ. We're going to start off by engaging the high pass filter up at 30 Hertz. Now, I don't like to push it any further than that, especially with dance music. You know, it's focused for the club, and we really don't want to lose out any of that low end energy and power. Having said that, we're just going to use this high pass filter to remove all of the inaudible stuff under 30 Hertz because we don't need that stuff. Moving on to the low shelf, I'm going to put a boost in here, and we're going to flick through the different frequency bands and have a listen to which one we think is going to sound best for this mix. Okay, so I'm going to stick at 50 hertz there. I think that's giving a nice little bit of power and oomph to my kick drum, but it's not too boomy in the upper low end frequencies. We're going to do the same here with the high frequency band. So I'm going to put a boost in and then we're going to flick through the frequencies. Okay, so the 16 kilohertz there is sounding great. It's adding that air and space that I want to the top of my mix, and we've already processed at 8 kilohertz on the drum bus. So I think that 16 kilohertz on the mix bus is doing exactly what I want. Okay, let's listen to the whole mix in and out with the violet EQ on the mix bus. Okay, so that's my process using the Violet EQ. I hope you found that useful and enjoyable. The plugin is available via the SSL eStore or as part of the ever-growing SSL Complete subscription. My name is Made by Pete. I will see you soon.